Hello, 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 Pythonistas. Hello, data scientists, machine learning enthusiasts, AI evangelists. Welcome to the session where we're going to be talking about the Zen of machine learning, the lessons that we can learn from the Zen of Python for data science and for machine learning. So, before I begin, in case you missed the Q&A and you have questions and I haven't answered them during the summit, feel free to reach out to me through my network, whether it is on LinkedIn, on Twitter, through my Medium. I always answer. It might take me a little bit of time, but I always answer any questions you may have. If you don't remember my network, don't worry, just look for Jack Rafer Baruch or Jack Rafer anywhere on Google, and I'm fairly easy to find. So write to me and I will be happy at any point to answer any of your questions in case you missed the Q&A. So before we start, a little bit about myself. My name is Jack Rafer Baruch. I'm a psychologist and behavioral economist. I transitioned a couple of years back into data science, and I've been working with psychometrics and people analytics for individual and collective improvement. I'm the head of data science at Intelligence, where we work a lot on figuring out and finding ways to measure, especially social and emotional skills, which tend to be very hard to measure, to help both organizations and people improve. And I'm also a datapreneur, but we can talk about that another time. So, my inspiration. The state of affairs is that we have a lot of companies doing amazing data science and building incredible machine learning models. Most of these models are very good at doing exactly what they do. The problem is that most of what they do is not necessarily good for people. It's good for business. It's a business first approach. Like, for example, YouTube wants to keep you engaged, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be happy, or that it's going to make you a better person, or that it cares at all about your mental state or your welfare. It is completely focused on just keeping you engaged no matter what. And it works perfectly well for the business. But personally, I believe that machine learning and artificial intelligence in general should have a people-first approach. It should be focused on how to help us be better people, how to make our lives easier, more joyful, more abundant, and not just making the business better. How did we get here? I mean, what happened? First of all, if you remember a few years back, just 3 years back actually, there was the infamous Cambridge Analytica scandal. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. With Cambridge Analytica, what happened is that they took a lot of information from Facebook and they were using these wonderful models, very well-built models, but instead of using them for good, they were using them to influence people, to influence election results, not only in the United States, but in many other places. And this is an issue because now we're using literally machine learning for evil. We're using it to manipulate people towards an outcome that is not necessarily what they want. What's been happening is that, again, there's an engagement first, an ad first focus, a business first focus. There are a lot of privacy and security issues, but the one thing that we're not talking enough about is the psychological and the ethical issues behind the models that we're building. How are our models actually affecting people? Are they really making their lives better, or are they making their lives worse, even though they might be making the business better or making a bigger profit? The biggest problem with this is that we've generally built this false dichotomy. I mean, it's either we focus on business or we focus on people. And this isn't new, and this is not exclusive to machine learning and AI. This is something that has been happening for many, many decades now. So they've convinced us that you can either focus on the business, and that's the most important thing, or you focus on the people. And no matter which one you take, it's going to be bad for the other side. So if you focus first on the people, it's going to be bad for business. And if you focus first on business, it might be bad for the people, but as long as it's good for the business, who cares? The issue is that this is a completely false dichotomy. It's not true. There are other options. We can actually do both. So the actual question is, do we take a business first approach or a people first approach? The problem, and a lot of businesses, I agree, they need to do both. They need to be good for the business and be good for the people. If you take a business first approach, the big problems come after mid to long term. Why? Because people get tired. If it's not good for the people, eventually you will lose those clients. They will no longer be your clients. So it is not sustainable in the long term. Whereas if you take a people first approach, you are taking care of your clients. So they'll be your clients today and they will be your clients in 10 years. And if you take a people first approach, you can also take care of the business. It just means business second, meaning that as long as people are taken care of and the business is making money, it's okay. But this difference that you just have a priority that people are first and business second, but this is also important because your business needs to make money. This is the position that I believe everybody should have when it comes to machine learning and artificial intelligence. It's not picking one or the other. It's just making sure that while we're doing good business, we are actually taking care of people and making them better, helping them be better, and not just making money. So if, depending on how long you've been working with Python, you've probably know about import this, a wonderful Easter egg that gives you the Zen of Python. So back in 1999, Tim Peters, known as one of the biggest contributors to Python by none other than Guido van Rossum, its creator, penned down 20, although he only actually wrote 19 principles, to sum up the feeling, the ethos, the philosophy behind the Python language. The 20th one is still waiting for Guido to actually fill in, as Tim said, which he hasn't, but we still hope that at one point in time he will, although having 19 of 20 principles is not bad, and having that one missing gives a little bit of the fun of Python. So the important part is that this actually gave us a philosophy on how to program with Python and how to code. And here are my favorite parts. Principles 4 and 5. Simple is better than complex, and complex is better than complicated. So here we start saying there's a philosophy. You should program in a simple manner. The simpler the code, the better. And trust me, especially when you go back to code that you wrote 2 or 3 years ago, this is very important, because the more complicated, the more complex or complicated it is, the harder it is to read and even harder to fix. So again, you want simple first, but if you can't make it simple, it's okay to make it complex as long as it's not complicated. Again, it should work. So if at the end of the day, you make it complicated, so it has to be, so it is. But you always try to make it as simple as possible. And that's the idea behind these 2 principles. Principles 8 and 9. Special cases aren't special enough to break the rules, although practicality beats purity, meaning don't break the rules, or at least try your best never, ever, ever to break the rules. That way you can have good code every single time, all of the time. Nonetheless, you have to be practical. So if you have to break the rules to make something work, do it, but try not to. So again, as you can see, it's not a straitjacket. It doesn't tell you this has to be every single time. There's no flexibility. There's a lot of flexibility, but at the same time, there are guidelines that you should follow because it's going to make you a better Pythonista, a better Python programmer. And number 17 and 18, my absolute favorite. If the implementation is hard to explain, it's a bad idea. And 18, if the implementation is easy to explain, it may be a good idea. Again, if putting something together is very hard to explain or you can't explain it at all, yeah, it's a bad idea. And the same thing happens with machine learning. Think about it. If you can't explain a model, if you can't explain how you're going to build it, if you can't explain how it's going to make predictions, it's probably a bad idea. Although I know there are some models that are black boxes, but the more interpretable they are, the better. On the other side, if the implementation is easy to explain, it may be a good idea. There's no guarantee that something that's easy to explain is a good idea, but you're definitely on the right path. So as you can see, this Zen of Python it's like the Zen path of Python allows you to understand how you should program. It gives you guidelines, it gives you a philosophy, it gives you an ethos. It's fairly easy to follow. And again, only 19 principles. So how has this helped Python? Well, think about it. I'm not 100% sure, and I can't guarantee that having the Zen of Python actually is the reason why Python is so successful today, but I believe it is. I believe one of the reasons that it has this very easy to follow ethos and that it has a philosophy behind it is one of the reasons why it has become very successful. So today, it is the second most popular language in the world. Number one is JavaScript. This is according to the Redmond Programming Language Rankings. And Python just consistently stays up there. Every day there are more courses. Every day there are more people programming in Python. It's fairly easy to learn. And again, one of the reasons it's easy to learn is because it has a philosophy that makes sense. It's very easy to flow. And for me, I believe it's one of the easiest codes to read. And that makes all the difference in the world because it makes it easier to collaborate. And it makes it easier to go back to previous work and make changes and improvements. And also, it is the top language for machine learning and artificial intelligence today. This is according to the 2020 analysis of GitHub repositories. You have to admit it, Python is the go-to language today for most machine learning and artificial intelligence. Again, it's easy. It has this wonderful philosophy behind it. And it has a lot of tools. It's easy to contribute to the programming language. So it has built tons of tools from NumPy to Matplotlib to scikit-learn to PyTorch to actually make it easy. And of course, it was one of the first implementations for TensorFlow, which is highly used in deep learning. So again, Python today is one of the biggest, most important languages in the world, and it is the most important language for machine learning and AI. And I do believe the Zen of Python is one of the big reasons this has happened. Now, this is the beginning. Now I want to talk about why we need a Zen of machine learning. Why should we be considering philosophical postulates and to think of a right way that leads to good behavior in machine learning? First of all, because of trust. See, cases like Cambridge Analytica damage the industry. Still today, I've been having a few conversations all over the place with many people. And sometimes when anything that has to do with psychometrics and people analytics comes up, the people who do remember Cambridge Analytica, oh, I don't want to manipulate people. See, now we have this amazing tool that can actually help tons of people and people are afraid to use it. So we have to avoid bad behavior because it leads to a lack of trust. A lot of things that have happened recently with the hate speech on Twitter, Facebook, and other social media, it leads to lack of trust. And that is a problem. Building machine learning systems that hurt people will be a problem for the industry for many years to come. So the less we do it, the better for all of us. Second, because nowadays people are lost. Although yes, there are amazing machine learning models and there are amazing systems, a lot of the biggest systems that touch people's lives are putting them last. There's a business first approach that is creating a slew of issues that we need to take care of. We can't have people just stuck on YouTube all day long because it's good for their engagement, it's good for their ads. We can't have people buying stuff they don't really need. We have a planet to save. We have a lot of issues with poverty, with food, with a slew of issues. And trust me, making bigger business more money is not one of those issues. So instead of having people last, we need to put people first. Number three, bias. There is a lot of bias in the models. And the problem is that if you have biased data, which happens constantly, and here I'm talking about human bias, not getting into the statistical bias issues. If we start with the biased data, that's biased against a certain group of people, gender, race, etc., those models are just going to make those biases deeper because that's what models do. If we make a mistake when we're hiring people and we build a model about hiring people that prefer males to females, guess what's going to happen? The model is going to learn and it's going to deepen the selection of males over females. So that's a big issue. That another one of the reasons we need a Zen of machine learning. We are also, one of these problems coming from blind data trust. We are so eager, and I get it, this is the exciting part. We are so eager to get on to building models that we're not questioning the data. Where did the data come from? Why is this data good? Are there any biases in this data? How is this data going to build a model? How is it going to affect the model negatively and positively? We can't just trust the data. We have to understand it, and we have to be able to deal with it in a way that removes biases, that is going to be helpful for people, etc. And finally, ethics. There have been a lot of ethical issues the last couple of years with machine learning, with big tech companies, and we need to pay a lot of attention to them because we need to be ethical. Again, it goes back to trust. The more ethical we are, the better models we're going to build in the future. And again, we're reaching that point where ethics is catching up to us. What are going to be the ethics of self-driving cars? What are going to be the ethics of other machine learning models that have human lives on their hands, literally on, we're putting human lives on the hands of a machine learning model. And we need to have the ethics, the good, solid ethics in place before we build them. So my proposal is we build the Zen of machine learning. This, again, these are just 7 principles that I came up with to get us started. After talking to many people, reading a lot about the ethics of AI, I tried to make them as wide and loose as possible. We don't want a straitjacket, but we do want clear guidelines. The idea with the Zen is that this is an open project that you can go in, you can change things, you can propose things. And at the end of the talk today, I will give you the link to the GitHub repository where you can add, comment, rant about anything that's proposed there. But please let us build this together. Again, this is just my initial proposal. Number 1, we should have a people-first approach always. So here we need to start asking ourselves, is what we are building good for people? Will it cause any harm? How is it helping people, and who specifically will it help? Most of the time, again, people first, I'm talking about everybody involved. We generally build these models for businesses. And yeah, okay, so we have a business model to tell the bank if we should approve a credit or not. Is this a good model? Is it helping the bank or is it actually helping the people? Because it should be helping both. If we're building a model that just says yes or no, is this actually useful, or should we be building a model that can predict how much money we can lend someone with a fairly certain guarantee that we'll get it back? So again, we have to start building these things people first. How is it affecting people? Is it allowing people to access more credit, for example, in the case of banks, or is it actually cutting them off even more from credit that they already have? So how is this affecting people on a global scale, on a community scale? We have to start thinking about these things, and I do believe that we should always start with a people-first approach. Number 2, we need to start thinking that there is no such thing as pure data. We know that data is raw, and this is not new. This has happened since the beginning of statistics. Data tends to be convenient for whoever collected the data in the first place, whether it's questionnaires, whether it's databases, whether it's videos, it doesn't matter. How was this data collected? Where is it coming from? Understanding the data as much as we can, so we know that the data is as good as it can be to build the models that we need, and that they're going to be good models. I know we want to rush into building models. It's exciting, it's great. We want to see the predictions right away, but we need to focus on taking care of the data and analyzing and understanding the data as best as we can. And never, 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 never trust the database just because everything's in place and it seems to be very clean and wonderful. Never trust the data. Look at it, understand it, and then you can start building a model. Number 3, and this is something we all know, biased data will always yield biased models. It doesn't matter what model we build. If a model is against certain races, it's against certain genders, it's against certain types of people, it will yield a biased model. And the bias is probably gonna be a lot deeper because it's one of the things that we did as humans when we collected the data. It's gonna be the thing that the model does because the model can only learn from the data that it has. So we need to look for the bias in the data itself and see if we can clean the data before we start building our models with it. Number 4, it's called data science. So we should stick to the science and avoid pseudoscience. I've talked to many people, and one of the biggest mistakes I find, especially with new data scientists, is that they want to build a model that does exactly this. Oh, I want to build a model that predicts why these kind of people are better than these other kind of people. See, that's already a pseudoscience. You're not trying to figure out where the data leads you. You're actually telling the data where you want it to go. And this is a problem because it's going to be a bad model. It's going to be a biased model, and you're not following the science. You're actually just telling the data that you want it to go there and you want to prove something, and literally you're probably skewing the data, you're misrepresenting the data, and you're definitely not doing any science. So it's most important, stick to the science and always try to avoid pseudoscience. This happens a lot in companies. Companies want a specific answer to their questions. Don't follow it. And if you're working in politics, try to do it even less. Number 5, accuracy is not always the answer. There's always discussions about accuracy in courses. People are saying, well, accuracy is not always the best, but we don't talk about it enough. And at the end of the day, most of the people just look at accuracy as the perfect answer, as the perfect metric. It's not. It always depends on what it is that you want to predict. If you want like overall results, yeah, accuracy is probably going to be the best one. Maybe you should check out F1 as well. If you definitely want more true positives, or you want to avoid false positives, then you have to pick precision, you have to pick recall. Just make sure that depending on what you're trying to build, you have the right metric for it. Number 6, a model will either benefit or hurt the end user. See, there's no middle ground here. Models are going to be good or they're going to be bad for the end user, period. Of course, there's difference. There's all kinds of people out there. But in general, for example, the models that are trying to target you with engagement, they're probably going to be I'm sorry, not probably. They are detrimental to you. There's plenty of studies how getting more and more engaged with social media actually makes your life worse. It makes you unhappier. So if it's not doing something for your well-being, it's going to be doing something against your well-being. So again, if we understand this, we can always focus on trying to build models and AI systems that are going to benefit the end user one way or another. And of course, that can benefit the business as well. And finally, and this is very, very important, this is a philosophical postulate. Either we all win or we all lose. Again, there is no middle ground. And I think everything that has happened the last few years with the pandemic, what we know is happening with climate change, we know this is true. We're either all winning or we're gonna all lose at some point or another. Some people may lose faster than others, and that's a bigger issue. And some people will keep winning until it's very late and they also lose. So we need to understand that in our industry, in data science and machine learning, this is a win or lose situation for all of us. So we need to focus on an all win. We need to build systems that help everybody win every single step of the way. They don't have to be huge wins. They just have to be wins for everyone. So instead of thinking about creating a ton of profit for your company or for yourselves. Think about how your company can make money for the next 100 years, and at the same time, make people's lives better, make the world a better place, make it a cleaner world, a more sustainable world, etc. So here's the Zen of Machine Learning on GitHub. You can check it out. You can go in. It's on my GitHub account. Just go into the Zen of ML. It's open. Feel free to fork it. Feel free to add to it, to comment on it, to do whatever you want. It's there for us. This is not something that I want you to have as is. It's something that I want all of us to collaborate. So at some point in the next year, in the next 2 years, we can come up with a Zen of machine learning that is easy to understand, that is intuitive, that gives us a path forward, that gives us guide on how to move forward every time we want to build machine learning models and every time we want to build artificial intelligence. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed today's talk. Again, if you have any questions, if you can't make it to the Q&A, just feel free to reach out to me at any, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Medium, anywhere you want. I will always answer. I'll be happy to take your questions. Go into the GitHub channel, check out the ML of machine learning. Again, reach out to me anytime. I'm very open to talking about subjects like ethics in machine learning. I'm happy to talk about people analytics, psychometry, and of course, datapreneurship. And once more, ethics and the Zen of machine learning anytime. So feel free to contact me. I will always answer, even if it takes me a couple of days. And I hope to see you soon and hope you enjoyed today's talk.